Happy Sunday, members of the VC and everyone else. It's Matt, and I'm back with yet another Ringo Starr album review. Been doing them in order of release, and after the one I'm doing today, there's still 5 more to go. So this is sort of a long-term project. I'm hoping to get these wrapped up by year's end. We'll see. Ringo may well have a new album out by the time I finish these, but we'll see what happens. So we are up to Choose Love, Ringo's release from June 7th of 2005, which unfortunately failed to chart in either America or England. Ringo and Mark Hudson produced album. Guest stars, as always, the big names on this go around being Billy Preston and Chrissie Hynde. Sadly, Billy Preston passed away in June 6th of 2006, so this may well be the last record that he ever played on, or if not, it's one of the very last ones he ever played on. But only 59 years old, so too young. He was a huge talent. So this is also another of Ringo's albums that were never released on vinyl. The other two being the two that preceded this, Vertical Man and Ringo Rama. The Christmas album was only on CD, but it finally got a vinyl release on Record Store Day a few years ago. Everything from this point forward has a vinyl release, so I'm hoping that in the near future, either through the Ringo releases that they've been doing in recent years or Record Store Day type situation, we'll get these three albums on vinyl. But yeah, so let's look at the packaging, I guess, it's such as it is. I just okay cover shot at best, I guess. It's just, to me, looks like they needed a cover photo and they said, hey Ringo, there's sort of this weird red wall, why don't you go stand in front of it? And they snapped a picture and said, alright, good to go. Not terrible, but nothing too exciting. Inside, that's a little silly, but it's kind of fun. This is the similar artwork on the last 3 CDs with these little blocks of pictures of Ringo and the people on the album. It's getting kind of old. They need to get something new going here. I really do like this picture, even though it's sort of washed out and faded, but that might have made a better cover photo. And the rest is nothing too exciting. Peace and love message from Ringo. Here is the back of the CD, and there's nothing to write home about on that. So there's the packaging, such as it is. Someone on one of my earlier Ringo reviews, well, talking about the later Ringo albums, the 90s and forward albums, and I should have written his name down, I apologize, I didn't, but he said that he likes the 70s Ringo albums better because they seem to be more genuine, or they seem to have Ringo's stamp or himself in the albums, whereas the later albums seem more, I guess, generic or workmanlike to him. I'm not sure if I agree with that completely, but I do agree with it at least somewhat. I know that in the 70s, you know, at least through 73, 74, you still had that magical haze of the Beatles in the air, which is still around, but not the way it was back in those days. And those 70s albums, by and large, except for the country album, you always had some Beatles participating in the album with Ringo, which you can't unfortunately have that now, other than when Paul shows up occasionally on a Ringo album, which he doesn't on this. And but I do like these later albums. I found a lot of them I wasn't familiar with at all, or very little, and I have found that there's quite a bit of good stuff on these albums, and I really wasn't expecting that. I was expecting, once I got past the 70s, that the albums were by and large just going to be kind of identical, sound alike, generic cookie cutter type albums with not much to recommend. And while not everything is golden, there's some junk there, but there is a lot of good stuff that I've found. I've said that on these earlier reviews, but say it again, just there's more to Ringo's solo work than just the Ringo album, and it don't come easy, and a couple of singles from the 70s otherwise. So I do like the variety on the albums. I do like well, there's just a lot of good songs on here. One thing, and I will say, Ringo writes every song on this album. Him and Mark Hudson and other people, but Ringo written with others. I don't know. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but I'm not sure how much input he has into these later albums, or even his early albums from the '70s, for that matter. I don't know. When it says Ringo wrote it, I don't know if that means he wrote the bulk of the song. I don't know if he threw in a few words here and there, or wrote a line there, or these other people basically wrote it and he looked at it and said, "Yeah, it looks good to me." I have no idea. Instrumentally, he plays drums. He plays on this album again. He plays bass and organ here and there. The album before this, he played a little bit of guitar and so forth. Plays drums on every track, whereas in the '70s albums, it was usually him and someone else playing drums, or in some cases, him not playing at all. I don't think he played on the country album or Sentimental Journey. I'm not 100% positive on that, but so he plays drums on this album, and he has been on the last few. Good drums too, so that's nice. But a lot of these albums, you got these musical touches. The album before this, you get a jazz breakdown in the middle of a song. You get Indian instrumentation. You get cool or weird little experimental bits or introductions and codas. How much of that Ringo had a say or a hand in, and how much the Hudson and the people making the album with him just put it together and said, "Okay, the song's ready to go. Ringo, come in here, play the drums and sing." I have no idea, but so I can get where some people would think these were sort of workman-like albums, but I think there's enough good stuff and enough surprises to make them interesting. So there's that. I'd also give him credit for trying and for releasing these albums, because these albums don't sell. Nobody's buying these things with just hardcore Beatle fans and nobody else, and there's not that many of them buying them. They don't sell in any great quantity. Ringo knows they don't sell in any great quantity. He probably makes very little, if any, money off of these things. I guess he makes a little bit, but so he's either releasing them just because he loves to make music, and he's not making any money off of it, or he's making a little bit of money off of it in addition to his touring and the millions of dollars he already has. But that said, he could easily just quit releasing albums and stay home and count his money, or go on tour forever like he's been doing. Or he could say, it makes a little bit of money, I'll release an album every 2 or 3 years, and he could just phone it in and half-ass do it, knowing that it doesn't really matter what he does, a good album or a bad album, because the only people that are going to buy them are a handful of dedicated Beatle fans and nobody else really. So it's to his credit that he tries and that he makes these albums, I think, interesting and puts good songs on them. And so I give him credit for that. Let's see with my notes here. Joe, Mean Mr. Mayo, recently did a ranking of his Ringo albums, favorite to least favorite. This one was his least favorite, which first few listens I gave, I was tempted to agree with him. I've changed my opinion since. Of course, his second least favorite was Bad Boy, which is a really good album, but that's a discussion for another time. And I kind of got it the first few times I listened to this album, because the two albums before this, like I said, Ringo Rama and Vertical Man, are, I think, really good. I think they're up there with the Ringo album, in some cases better, or at least up there nearly on par with it. I have some really good songs, some really interesting musical choices and so forth. This one doesn't really, on the first couple of listens, nothing reached out and grabbed me by the collar, nothing got my attention. I was playing it in the car, like I said, and listened to it a couple of times on the way to work, because I have a long drive the first time I played it, and it just was like, yeah, it sounds like a later era Ringo album. It's just got that late Ringo era sound to it, and it's pleasant, it's nice. I was thinking I was going to write this album off as just Not a terrible album, but nothing really exciting to say about it. Sort of a background album if you're, doing stuff around the house or something, but not an album to really sit down and pay attention to. But it's a sneaky little album in that give it a few more listens and it starts to grow on you and gets a little bit more interesting, I think. So, I think it's a nice, worthwhile album. I don't think it's as good as the two that preceded it. But let's get on into the songs, and there's 12 songs on here. Unlike Ringo Rama, there's no B-sides or bonus tracks out there, so it's just the album proper. And by the way, the copy that I got, and I don't know if all of them are like that, it has the CD on one side, and the second side, if you turn it over, is a DVD with documentary and Ringo biography and song by song analysis and so forth. I haven't watched the DVD yet. I need to do that, but I don't think there's anything on there that wasn't on it's not on CD song wise. So, first song is Fading In, Fading Out. Opener is a nice Johnny head swaying track. It's sounds like I said, it sounds like just a generic Ringo track that you've heard a million times the first time or two you play it, but it starts to grow on you over time and gets a little better. Horns kick in at about 2 minute 15 second mark is really good. Guitar and drums are good throughout the whole song. Not a grab you by the collar and get your attention album or song. The doo-doo-da-da bit at about 3:35 is really good. Laugh at the end is good. It grows on you. It's a good opener. I'm going to give it a 6.5 for that one, Fading In and Fading Out. The one thing about this album I will say is that I'm going to be going back and playing Vertical Man and Ringo Rama. I wasn't overly familiar with either of those, and I thought those would be albums that I would just listen to get familiar with, do a review of. I'll probably put them on the shelf and basically forget or rarely pull them out and play them. I don't know that I'll be playing Choose Love a whole lot in the future. I'm not saying I never will, but probably not a lot. I will be playing those other two quite a bit. But let's keep on with the tracks. Number 2 is Give Me Back the Beat, which hit me at this point. This and the last couple of albums, Ringo's voice has really aged like a fine wine. It's a good voice in his old age. I'm not saying he's Paul McCartney or anything like that back in the day, but just a nice, comfortable, soothing, good voice for ballads and for rockers, and it's improved, if nothing else, over the years. So, Give Me Back the Beat is sort of a honky-tonk rockabilly, rattle-sounding mix of a song. It's really cool, good background vocals throughout the song. I love the pounding drum beat at about 2 minutes in, followed by a tasty little guitar solo. This would be a really good song for him to be playing concert, even though he doesn't play anything but the hits that everyone knows, which is unfortunate. Nice, cool little spoken bit at the end of the song. 8.3 for Give Me Back the Beat. It's a rollicking, upbeat, fun little rockabilly number there that sort of sounds like the Riddles or the Beatles in certain parts. Number 3 is Oh My Lord, which has a weird sort of that the sound of the tail end play out of Hey Bungalow Bill at the end of that song has sort of that same type of sound effect music vibe at the beginning and the end of the song, which is kind of cool. It's in that part it sounds like Ringo's singing through the fog off on a distant mountain or something, so it's a neat little studio trick there. About 35 seconds in, the song kicks in. Song's kind of mundane again the first few listens, but you've got nice background vocals. You've got Billy Preston on organ playing some really nice stuff. It's got a peace and love message, the usual Ringo peace and love, but it's sincere. It's not the cornball stuff that he's so often falls a victim to here. So it's got a little power balladish guitar solo, but somehow it works. I hate that sort of power ballad rock stuff, but here it actually works. Uh, Good vocal by Ringo again. Oh My Lord grows on you over time. I'm going to give it an 8. Fourth song is Hard to Be True, which starts off in a slow, sort of somnambulant trot or gait pace of a song. Has a kind of 80s sound to it. Sounds like an old 80s song in parts. It's got a little, sounds like a Led Zeppelin-ish guitar strum at the end of it. Very end of it. I kind of caught my attention. Acoustic guitar, Led Zeppelin strum, I'll say. Preston on backing vocals. But it's got some interesting bits that don't add up to a whole lot. But it's an okay song. I'm going to give it a 6.5. And so we go to song number 5, which is Some People, which this is kind of what Joe might have been talking about when he rated this album his least favorite Ringo. This is your generic Ringo sound song that you've heard a million times if you listen to solo Ringo. Pleasant, but it fails to excite. It almost sounds at times like it's a Traveling Wilburys reject or something. Some people can't really say anything horrible about it, but I certainly can't say anything good about it, and I'll give that a 5, I guess. Probably should be a 4, but I'll be nice and give it a 5. Number 6 song is Wrong All the Time, which is, you always got to have a country Ringo song, and this is it. This is sort of a end of the night at the bar song, maybe sitting on the porch, not now in Texas because it's still a million degrees, but sitting out on the porch at night with a glass of whiskey and your dog and listening to the radio, looking at the stars type song. It's a good little country Ringo song. This would be another one that'd be good for him to play in concert, but of course he won't. But Wrong All the Time, I'll give that a 7 on that. And song number 7 is Don't Hang Up, which is the one with Ringo and Chrissie Hynde singing sort of a duet and singing together at times. It's kind of a goofy song, but it's a rockin' fun little pop song. Reminds me a little bit of Tramp, the old Otis Redding and Carla Thomas song, which Tramp is a better song than this, but this is a fun song, and I don't know, it may be the best thing Chrissie Hynde's done in years, because not that it's anything monumental or great, but yeah, it's just they seem like they're having fun together, and their voices work well together, just like Ringo's and Willie Nelson's voice worked well on Write Me Another One on Ringo Rama. Is that the title of that? Yeah, I think so. Write One for Me on Ringo Rama. But Chrissie and Ringo work well together. It's a shame they didn't do more. And what did I give that one? Was Don't Hang Up. I gave it an 8. It's a fun song. It's a good little rock and pop song. Title track Choose Love is number 8. It's got a nice little guitar riff from it. This is where he starts mentioning Beatle song titles, which is unfortunately he would do more and more of this as his albums go on, and fall back on that and these Beatle references and stuff, which gets kind of tiresome. It's not overly done in this song, but it's still kind of another song, Choose Love, the title. Kind of a fun song, pretty forgettable song though. I'll give it a 5.5. Me and You is song number 9. This is a song that's obviously a love song to Barbara, about Barbara. It's got a nice little bit of Spanish or classical guitar roughly midway through it. That's about all I can say for it. It's a pretty boring song otherwise. I'm going to give Me and You a 4. And this is one where, again, I would agree with Joe's assessment on the album overall. 10th song is Satisfied. Has a little bit of a kind of a, I don't know, slide or Hawaiian guitar bit that's interesting, just because it reminds me of Free as a Bird, the kind of fake Beatles song, which I've never been crazy about anyway, but it reminds me of that. Good vocal by Ringo as throughout the whole album. He's good vocally. Another song that's not terrible, but just doesn't leave any impression, and so I'll give "Satisfied" a 4, and that's sort of the low point of the album. Those two songs, I think. The one thing, and it's a problem not just with Ringo, but with CDs, because when you had vinyl records, I think you can get. I don't remember the numbers, but you can on a vinyl record you can get about 30 minutes of music without compromising the sound, and on a CD you can get, I think it's like 90 minutes of music without messing up the sound. And so a lot of bands, especially in the 90s when CDs were, vinyl sort of went away and CDs were the thing, a lot of bands fell victim to that, to where we've got 90 minutes we got to fill. And so you got these long albums with a ton of songs, and you got a bunch of junk and a bunch of filler, where if they would have trimmed it down and chunked, 20, 30 minutes worth of songs out of there, they would have had a lot stronger, a lot better album. And I think that's the same here. You could, those last two songs, you could easily just throw them out and it wouldn't be missed at all. But let's go on with two more songs to go. And 11, song number 11 is "The Turnaround." Again, another generic late period Ringo sounding thing that also, in a strange way, sort of sounds like 70s Ringo, but in a generic way. From about 1 minute 50 seconds to about 2 minute 30 seconds, it's kind of interesting from a musical standpoint. There's just some soloing going on, sax, and the drums are good throughout. Uh, the Funny Papers ending is sort of funny, and not funny, but just sort of neat. But again, this is another song that has some interesting parts, but those parts don't add up to anything really meaningful or substantial. Uh, but for those few interesting parts, I'll give "The Turnaround" a 5.6. So I guess that's also another part of the low part of the album. The last song, number 12, is "Free Drinks," which is a really cool, fun song. It's sort of a new wave spaghetti western sounding song. Sounds like some of those cool, weird songs that were on the soundtrack to the Repo Man movie. And in the Repo Man movie, if you remember back in the good old days there, it's sort of a strange, like Oingo Boingo, 999, and Phil Collins era Genesis walk into a bar and hang out and walk out with having written a song. Um, can't stand Phil Collins or Genesis, or not the 80s Genesis anyway, but in this case it works. I love 999 and Oingo Boingos. They're goofy but okay. But fun, just goofy song, really new wave sounding. If you played this for someone and didn't tell them who it was, it probably would, no one would guess it was Ringo. Um, Free Drinks is kind of a funny song for him to be singing, being that he's been however many years sober at that point. But it's all in fun, and it's just a knees up, sort of rave up new wave bit of fun here. So then there's a little bit of silence at the end of the song. Then there's just sort of this bonkers little play out of music that's fun. Free Drinks, I'm going to give it an 8.8, probably my favorite on the album. And I don't know. Like I said, I kind of agreed with Joe first few spins, but subsequent spins, it's grown on me. And while there's no obvious hit or major Ringo song on here, there are 3 or 4 songs that grow on you and are actually really solid and really good. So overall, I'm going to give this album a 6.9, and I will be back with Liverpool 8 is the next one up, which I think I only know one song off of that, but I'll give it a few listens and get familiar with it and come back and bore you guys with my thoughts on that. Hope everyone has a good weekend, and we'll talk to you later.